So I heard a new term today, barbell, as it applies to
Yes.
advertising. The idea that internet advertising is bifurcating along two different parts of the spectrum, the rise of native or soft qualitative advertising on the one end of the bar, and on the other, data-driven, very scientific
Yes.
advertising. And are you playing in both ends of that spectrum?
We certainly are. I think that spectrum, actually, it comes from Tim Armstrong at AOL first, that phrase. It came a little while ago. I think there's a lot of merit in the concept. I think you have to also bear in mind William Gibson's comment from a few years ago, science fiction writer of all people, which is the future has already arrived, it's just not evenly distributed. I think that programmatic is something which is not going to go back in its box. Technology very rarely does. There are a lot of advantages from a marketeer's point of view, and indeed everybody, as long as the business models are being worked out, as long as the value chain works out. I have a lot of issues with the value chain, but programmatic is one end of the barbell, a sort of automated, more efficient way of doing things, and audience-based targeting has a lot of merit, and we're also playing at the native end, that's for sure.
So on the native end, so some people would look at native advertising and think the BBC and native advertising, which is after all the blurring of editorial and commercial imperatives. Of course, this is BBC Worldwide we're talking about, but tell us more specifically what BBC Worldwide is doing with native advertising.
So we have native advertising on the service outside of the news environment. There's a real legitimacy. There's no particular reason why a brand, if it's genuine, if it understands what its audience is after, shouldn't have a voice. Anyone can tell a story. I mean, the way for brands to be successful is to be genuine about that story and also to be distinctive about that story. I mean, there are plenty of great examples. If you look at GoPro, cameras you wear on your head or on your bike or something, they've done a fantastic job of listening to their audience and engaging with those people. If you look at Red Bull, of course, as the classic, man jumping out of balloon and kind of thing. In the BBC's environment, we have really high quality content. One of the biggest challenges for anybody and putting content onto one of our sites is actually to compete with the other content that's there. And so it's necessary for that content to be an interesting story. And so we've been working very closely with advertisers to develop that. A recent example was Paramount that ran a program with us around spying ahead of the launch of the Jack Ryan theatrical release. And so instead of just running advertising, they actually decided to go a lot further and put in a lot of content about the business of spying, the art of spying, and lots of things like that. And it was actually really, really good stuff. The response from the audience is really good. We have lots of other examples. Yeah. It's certainly being authored sometimes directly by BBC journalists, not necessarily news journalists. The news journalists are usually pretty focused on the news. But there are BBC journalists that are employed to help do that. I mean, the quality bar is really high. But of course, the content partner has content of their own, so there can be rewrites and editing worked off the basis of what they're doing. So to be very clear, our native advertising proposition is outside of the news environment. We have a lot of in-depth feature content. So the point is, the great thing about native advertising is that you as a marketeer can be on a known platform. That known platform has a tone of voice, has a standard, has a quality bar. As I say, you have to compete with other content that's there. The BBC expertise can help make sure that you're telling stories, that you're actually bringing the story to life. You're challenging expectations, you're adding value to the audience, you're engaging the audience, you're helping them live inside the story, you're allowing them to socially share and things like that. It is not just talking, it's not just a narrative, it's not just saying, here's my functional benefit, here's my emotional benefit, here's my differentiation. That's the base point. Really good branded content is actually branded storytelling. Yeah, is actually engaging the audience in a much more emotional way. That is where the expertise of a broadcaster or any other sort of content publisher can come together. That working together can produce something really very compelling for the audience, which is good for the brand marketeer from an engagement point of view. If it really works, then the audience is going to share it and send it on. And we heard from BuzzFeed today at the conference here that actually one of their key metrics is exactly how much sharing is going on of any content that they would call native advertising.
So how far along the marketing funnel are you walking native advertising clients? Are you showing them ROI at the end of the funnel, and what is that ROI metric?
Well, I think all of that depends exactly on what the marketeer is actually after. Most of our work would be considered to be at the top of the funnel with brand marketeers. I mean, I don't think that in the example I discussed with Paramount that they were really seeking to see if we actually drove ticket sales. Yeah. They are actually positioning themselves as an organisation which is interested in demonstrating that they're interested in their audience. One of the great things about native advertising is you can be on a platform where the audience is known, but you as a marketeer have the opportunity for that audience to perceive you differently. Yeah. There are plenty of ways to drive ROI and direct marketing sales and last minute this, that and the other. I would say that native actually takes a different position in the funnel. I don't think you're attempting to achieve everything. I think it's about a longer term positioning of your brand. Look, we're an interesting set of people. Look, we care, we listen to our audience, we understand our audience. In the same way as in the mobile world, we've just done some research which says that affluent consumers who see brand advertisers on mobile screens perceive those advertisers to be dynamic and modern. In the same way, in the native world, the marketeer is attempting to adjust the message. It's to say, look, we're more than just this. We've got these facets to us as well. We're engaging with our audience in a different way. We understand you. Those are the things which I think go down very well, whether the audience is millennial or whether it's affluent or whichever it is. In video advertising, we're selling pretty much everything we've got, to be honest, at the moment. Demand is a very useful area for us in terms of pricing we can get and what have you. Actually, the connection between online video advertising and television advertising remains very close, and we sell across of multiple platforms. I would say that the bit that's interesting about programmatic for us is exactly that. Is the ability to is the data piece, is the ability to identify the audience and actually pinpoint that audience in a new way. So some advertisers will. The really great thing about programmatic is that if you're a marketeer, you want to hit 1 million of a certain kind of person. That's actually your objective. If that is your objective, then you can do that across multiple media and actually accurately reach the volume or the target you're after. That is something which there's no reason why you wouldn't take advantage of if you're marketing your website, because there's a different line on the Marcom's plan, as you were. People are actually seeking to do that, particularly if you've got a brand safe environment. There are other marketeers for part of the schedule, or maybe the whole of the schedule, where it runs and what it runs in and what it's actually saying is as important as who it's reaching. And in that instance, that's more likely to be a direct relationship. But it can still, and will probably increasingly be going forwards, a private programmatic arrangement where you've got into a direct relationship to do much greater targeting. I think a lot of people think that programmatic is just some sort of thing where it has to be instant, low-end, commoditized, real-time trading in the nanoseconds, this audience for this much money. Actually, an awful lot of the money in the programmatic space is there in the private relationships where you're striking and using data to target in different ways. As usual, the audience is moving faster than the advertising business, and for our business, more than 40% of our audience is now accessing our content not using desktop devices. Now, market by market around the world, it's a lot more than that. So the newest thing for us is our first national edition designed. We've picked India as the place to go. More than half of the page views we have in India are not on desktop. They're mostly on smartphones or other handhelds. Actually, I struggle a little bit with the word mobile because the variety of different screens. Our new responsive service, more than 4,000 different devices, I think it was in February, yeah, including some we weren't really quite sure what they were, but the point is to have a service which resizes and reformats correctly for the screen that it's actually operating on is really good. So that means we've gone with our first national edition in India, designed around the responsive service specifically for the mobile, where that audience can pick up more relevant stuff in the Indian market. Of course, still has access to the global news and whatever, and still has access to the various language services we have, such as Hindi or Tamil or even Urdu, in that marketplace, because the BBC's long had language services, but is focused specifically for the fast-growing our mobile traffic in India has grown 340% in 2 years. That's something to pay attention to. And of course, our timing, from our point of view, is very neat because next month is the Indian elections, the largest democracy in the world, more than 100 million new voters, bigger than the population of the UK. An awful lot of those users will be on smartphones.